The NFL Scouting Combine is over. 4 big things coming out of the Combine that could and maybe should affect the Texans here the rest of the offseason. Welcome into the channel. I'm Cody Stoots. Let's talk some Texans, and let's talk about 4 big things that I feel like should and could affect the Houston Texans going forward after the Scouting Combine is over. What a fun week it was in Indianapolis. Thank you to everybody who liked all the videos, commented on the videos, watched the videos here on YouTube, subscribe to Houston Football, which if you haven't, you can check it out in the link in the description down below. Really appreciate everything. It was a fun week at the Combine, and still so much coming out of Combine week. But let's get to these 4 big things that should and could affect the Houston Texans offseason. And this one's really a should. This first one, they should get one of these young wide receivers. I love this wide receiver class. I love this wide receiver class. Do I need to say it again? I don't think I need to say it again. There's so many different guys in this class. There is something for everybody when it comes to these wide receivers. And I think about this offense, and I think about how it took a big step back when Tank Dell wasn't on the field anymore. It was just Nico Collins and CJ Stroud trying to make some stuff happen with a hobbled Noah Brown or older Robert Woods or rookie Xavier Hutchinson or basically a rookie John Mechie. Just they couldn't get it done. And so some depth at the wide receiver spot. And you think about the needs that this team needs to address come free agency, maybe over on the defensive side, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. A young wide receiver along with Nico Collins and Tank Dell, to me, makes a ton of sense, especially if, as Nick Caserio hinted last week, Nico Collins gets a contract extension. It'd be nice to not have Nico Collins and then say a veteran wide receiver making a whole bunch of money there in the wide receiver room. But second contract, Nico Collins, rookie contract, Tank Dell, rookie contract, rookie from this year. Man, there's a lot of different options too. I mentioned something for everybody. As many names as I can that I feel like fit the Texans and or have a role with the Texans, and give you a little bit of info on them or something that I heard about them coming out of the Combine and what they bring to the table. How about Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU, who had a formal meeting with the Texans, can kill you from the slot, can also play outside, would give Bobby Slowick a chess piece. Teams were really impressed with his detail-oriented approach to football. Ladd McConkey from Georgia. I call him this year's Tank Dell. People are going to shoehorn him because of his size, and they're going to shoehorn him because of his skin color into being a slot guy. Well, as McConkey told everybody last week, he played more outside than he did inside. He was a workout freak at the Combine. He has a similar athletic profile based on his workout to Garrett Wilson, the former offensive Rookie of the Year. McConkey is a fun watch. He did it all at Georgia. Troy Franklin, the speedster from Oregon. He talked about meeting with the Texans, how it was a good meeting. They got to know him a little bit. He can just run past everybody. How about Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy from Texas? Adonai Mitchell is Steve Smith. That's right. Former NFLer Steve Smith's favorite wide receiver in this draft. He is one of the total package type of guys that the Texans could go out there and snag. And then we all saw what Xavier Worthy did in the 40-yard dash. Hey, he plays almost as fast as that 40-yard dash. Both those guys would be interesting players. How about Keon Coleman? Here's a fun note about Keon Coleman. The 40 disappointed some people, but you know what he did do? He played fast and he worked out fast. He was one of the fastest players in the workouts. And when you look at the GPS data that shows you how fast those guys were, he was one of the fastest, if not the fastest, throughout a lot of those workouts. A year ago, the same guy that got that type of nod, maybe the 40 time wasn't impressive, but the workouts were fast. How about Puka Nacua? Keon Coleman, a big-time playmaker that plays fast, even though he doesn't run fast in a straight line. However, when they ran the go routes, he was the second fastest wide receiver at the Scouting Combine from Florida State. He's a guy to keep an eye on. Now, those are kind of fringe first round guys. Then you start getting into the second round guys. Ricky Purcell from Florida, who was really good at the Senior Bowl and then tested off the charts at the scouting combine. Bam, same thing I just said about Ricky, I'm going to say about Roman. Roman Wilson from Michigan, he's the take the top off type of guy. The 40 time was a little disappointing. Another guy that plays faster than the 40 time. Xavier Legette, he is a physical freak. He is Deebo Samuel style player. You can run him in the running back spot. You can throw the ball to him. He's physical. Deebo Samuel even tweeted about Xavier Legette. So the next Deebo tweeted about by the previous Deebo, or I guess the current Deebo, that's a name to keep an eye on. Brendan Rice, yes, the last name is Rice. He's a physical monster. Guys pass interference with him, and he still catches the football like he did at the Senior Bowl, and he tested pretty well. Jamari Thrash is a guy that had some success at Louisville this year after playing at Georgia State. He's trying to learn the slot receiver. The Texans met with him. Malachi Corley is another Deebo Samuel-esque guy. He's the Yak King, according to Steve Smith in this draft. I could go on and on and on. I want to throw one more name at you because I know the Texans had an official meeting with him. Javon Baker from UCF. He's a guy that started his career at Alabama, broke out, played really well at Central Florida this past year, a route running technician, so he can do a little bit of everything. There's so many options at wide receiver, not just at 23 in the second round, maybe in the third round, in something like in the early second round if the Texans want to make a move, or late second round if they want to have 2 late second round picks. There will be pass-catching options, and because there are so many options, I'd like to see the Texans go out there and spend a draft pick on one of these young pass catchers. Should and could affect the offseason. How about going young for that wide receiver 3 spot? Going into the offseason, we knew there were a lot of questions on the front 7 for this team. So defensive tackle Sheldon Rankins is a free agent. Defensive end Jonathan Grenard's a free agent. Linebacker Brett Cashman is a free agent. Lots of free agents around in the front 7 of this defense. Coming out of the combine, here's something I do know about the front 7. The Texans have a number of ways that they can go about this. If they feel like they want to bring back Jonathan Grenard and then try to invest in a defensive tackle in the draft, there will be guys that are worth that investment. If they want to flip it, invest in a defensive tackle in free agency, but also spend a draft pick on a defensive end, there should be guys available there, like Penn State's Chop Robinson or Missouri's Darius Robinson. There should be guys available at the defensive end spot. You want to invest in a linebacker? Peyton Wilson from NC State. He worked out really well at the scouting combine, played awesome last year for NC State, one of the best players in all of college football. You want to make an investment in him? That's fine. You want to spend money on a veteran at the linebacker spot. There's a lot of different ways the Texans can go in the front 7. There's enough at the top part of this draft that they're not shoehorned into have to get this or have to get that from that standpoint, which allows Nick Caserio to be flexible, to be malleable, and kind of move and maneuver throughout this draft however he needs to. So number 1 was go get one of those young wide receivers. Number 2 was do kind of whatever you want with the front 7. You're not beholden to any one thing. Number 3 is this cornerback situation is getting pretty murky. Now, I've been talking about Quinyon Mitchell, the Toledo cornerback, for weeks now. Ever since I saw him at the Senior Bowl, I fell in what the Giants' old general manager said about Saquon Barkley. Full bloom love. It's old school throwback cornerback. I feel like he's the best quarterback in this draft, but after as fast as he was, as many bench press reps as he had at the combine, the reports that he had incredible interviews, Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo is probably not going to be there when the Houston Texans select, and probably also not going to be there Terrion Arnold from Alabama, the second best corner in a lot of people's minds in this draft. So if cornerback number 1 and cornerback number 2 aren't there, hey, Cody, there's some other options there. Yes, but it's a big but. And some of these, there's a smaller but with these corners. Some of these, there's a bigger but with these corners. There's question marks with corners 3 through, say, 5 in this draft. And some of them are small question marks that you don't have as much worry about. And some of them are significant question marks. For instance, Kool-Aid McKinstry, the other cornerback from Alabama, he shows up at the combine during his medicals. They discover an injury in his leg that could lead to a decrease in athleticism if it's not treated right and it doesn't heal right. And he didn't do any of the workouts because he had to get that injury taken care of. Is he going to be ready for camp? Can you count on him? Can you put him out there week 1 against whoever the Texans are playing? That's a question mark. Cooper DeJean, he's recovering from a serious leg injury. He didn't do any workouts. He should work out later this offseason, but he didn't do any of the workouts. He's recovering from that injury, still getting ready for that. And we don't even know if he can actually play cornerback, if he's a big nickel, if he's a safety. There's a question mark about if he's actually a cornerback. Nate Wiggins from Clemson, really impressive guy at Clemson, came in, said he's going to run really fast. He ran really fast, not quite Xavier Worthy fast, but he ran really fast. And then when he weighed in and stepped on the scale, most everybody watching this video is heavier than him. Now, look, you don't worry about a guy being super light when all he's got to do is put his hand on the football and knock it away or come down with the ball. But I do worry when you think about big wide receivers in this league. I worry about guys running at him in the rushing attack and him having to go out there and try to make a play at 170 pounds. There's a concern there. And then Enos Rankstraw Jr. from Missouri, he's a really nice corner prospect, really good play recognition. When he was asked about one of his favorite plays last year, he talked about diagnosing a rushing attack from Tennessee early in the play and turning what he thought was going to be probably an 8-9 yard gain for a first down into a 3-yard gain. Tennessee had the punt. Super physical guy, can get after it, but he hasn't played a ton of man. Missouri used him a lot in zone coverage. Do you know if he can just go man somebody up and take care of business? So again, concerns about the cornerbacks after the top 2. Now, you end up with one of the top 2. That's fine. You have less concerns. I'm also concerned, talking with everybody at the combine that I did talk about, I'm concerned about this free agent cornerback class. So that spot opposite Derek Stingley, it's very murky right now. And I have a hard time seeing how it gets significantly cleared up until after the first and second round of this draft. There's obviously some other cornerback prospects, but I was focusing primarily on those first round guys. But, second round, third round cornerback, do you feel great about starting that guy opposite Derek Stingley day 1 when the Texans are supposed to be competing for the AFC South again, trying to increase their ranking in the AFC and find themselves in their first ever AFC championship game? I don't feel great about a rookie, opposite Derek Stingley that was drafted in the second or third round. I feel a little bit better about some of these first round guys, but as I mentioned, they've got question marks. Now, with those 3 things in mind, the fourth thing coming out of the combine for me is a trade down makes the most sense right now. Without knowing who's available, without knowing who's there, moving back just a few spots when maybe an offensive lineman falls, maybe a quarterback falls, maybe one of these wide receivers that the Texans don't like but somebody else likes starts to fall, or multiple defensive linemen fall, and you can move back a couple of spots just to give Nick Caserio, who's traded around in the second and third round quite a bit in his general manager career, just to give him a tiny bit more ammunition. If you can move back from, say, 23 to 28, 23 to 30. Okay, looking at the Texans right now, the teams behind them: Dallas, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Arizona, Buffalo, Detroit, Baltimore, San Fran, and Kansas City. Well, if Detroit saw a corner that they wanted and the Texans didn't like that player, and you could go from, say, 23 to 29 and pick up some day 2, some day 3 compensation, I'd certainly think about it. I felt like a trade down made the most sense for the Texans for a while, and without knowing who's going to be there, I very much favor a trade down. Now, obviously, as we're all sitting there, the first round's happening, the clock is ticking, guys are coming off the board, obviously a trade down may not make sense. But if I could today say what I believe the Texans could and maybe should do with 23, let's move down just a couple of spots. It feels like that late first, early second round has kind of a glut of guys that will get pushed down the board by quarterbacks coming off of the board, the top 3 wide receivers coming off of the board, maybe 5 offensive linemen coming off the board in the first round. As some of those players get get pushed down, maybe it pushes some of that glut into that latter first, early second. And if the Texans say, I don't know, pick 28th, 29th, and added a third-round pick, and then they could use, say, one of those third-round picks and some other late picks to jump into the second, yet again, to get 2 second-rounders this year. I really like that idea. But again, that's card subject to change based on who's there. Because if big Byron Murphy from Texas is there at 23, you just run the card up there. You hang the phones up, you run the card up there because that guy's a big-time game changer at the defensive tackle spot from Texas. So, again, today, easy to say trade back, but I feel like a trade back is going to make a lot of sense when the draft shows up in those last few days of April. So, to recap here, this young wide receiver group, I really believe the Texans are going to have a shot at one of these guys in a variety of different spots throughout the draft. And, of course, if you move back, it makes it a little easier to take a depth player, the third wide receiver, over, say, maybe a starter at defensive end or defensive tackle. We talked about the options that the Texans have in the front seven. Hey, if you've already signed, say, a linebacker and a defensive end, and all the good defensive tackles are off the board, move back a little bit, grab a little extra, take a swing on a defensive tackle in the late second round that maybe was supposed to be a third rounder because you got a little extra room to play with. The Texans are not beholden to any plan at the front seven like perhaps they are at running back, where it's a weaker running back class and they maybe need to spend in free agency. Or same with tight end, a little bit weaker tight end class and need to spend on keeping Dalton Schultz as their tight end. The third one, this cornerback situation's getting murky. The first 2 guys at the top, Quinion Mitchell, Terry, and Arnold, looked like they should be gone based on how this thing's working out. And then there's question marks about those other guys. If they can answer the questions, then maybe it's pretty easy to draft them at 23. But if you can't answer those questions before the end of April gets here, it may just behoove you to wait on that cornerback spot. Plus, the free agents at cornerback, not great. So you maybe need to find the answers to those questions before you figure out what you're doing with that free agency money. And lastly, as we just mentioned it, trade back feels like the move today. Obviously, that all changes once the draft starts happening, but I do feel like there's going to be a number of players on day 2 that are impact players in 2024. And if all of a sudden you could walk out of day 2 with 3 of those players instead of 2 of those players, it would behoove the Texans to at least consider trying to make that happen. What do you think? What did you think of those 4 big things coming out of the Combine? What was your big thing coming out of the Combine? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you like on your way down to the comment section, throw me a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Free agency is right around the corner. We are less than a week away from talking about signings in the National Football League. You don't want to miss anything here on the channel, and start combing through Sign or Decline, the video series that I do with my good friend Landry Locker, who hosts the Locker Room here on YouTube. We've gone through a ton of different players. We'll talk about positions and more players this week as free agency is right around the corner. You don't want to miss it. I don't want you to go anywhere. You won't miss anything if you're subscribed to the channel, and you won't miss anything if you're subscribed to Houston Football, which is in the description down below as well. It's where I do all my writing. It's more extensive and deeper than I can get in these videos sometimes. And, hey, you can't always watch the videos, but, you're in a meeting, and you can scroll through the writing pretty easy. What was that, boss? Oh, yeah, no, those TPS reports will be ready. Pretty easy to scroll through Houston Football when you're in those big, important business meetings. Appreciate you watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Can't wait until we talk Texans again soon.